For 25 years, nothing has tasted better after a hard day's work than a Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's because since day one, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. We use 3 kinds of lemons, all hand-picked from family farms, then blended to perfection and cold-pressed to create the epic hard lemonade you know and love. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
When I found out I was going to be a parent, I immediately felt a lot of anxiety and worry. So I went on to BetterHelp to try to look for a therapist to help me with that.
My relationship with my family and with my boyfriend and with myself were suffering. I really needed help.
I was ruminating a lot. Really getting those thoughts out to a therapist and getting feedback was just life-changing.
If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, learn more at BetterHelp.com. That's BetterHelp.com.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, after a hot mic confession and going on the lam, Robert Durst finally faces a jury. But is justice served? We'll discuss the sequel to the true crime classic, The Jinx, Part 2. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Kevin, are you just married to me, like, for convenience and my wealth and just so that you can...
Are you married to me for mine?
So you can someday visit me in prison and say wry things to me and I can be like, Kevin.
That's how he could call you on collect. This is a collect call from Flynn.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Lara Bricker. Hello, Lara.
Rebecca. I'm good.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, the author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hi, Rebecca.
Toby, what would your collect call name sound like if we were going to get a phone call from you from prison in Los Angeles, California?
Like, Tommy!
Tobes.
I was going to do the, Rebecca! But then everybody else was doing shit, so I decided not to.
Listen, it sounds like we are speaking ill of the dead. We are, by the way. Speaking ill of the dead.
He's having a hard time finding anybody who's willing to say anything nice about him.
Laura,
like,
are you seriously like feeling bad about us making fun of Robert Durst at this point in time?
No, I'm going to make fun of all the bizarro COVID masks he wore when we get into it.
All right. So, Kevin, this is obviously Monday's program.
That's obvious.
What's coming up on Thursday's show?
Still working on it.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about the new podcast from Truth Be Told Presents. It's called She Has a Name.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that one. Can I just make mention of one thing?
Yeah.
We've gotten so much interesting feedback about the extra bonus episode we dropped, the Boston Globe conversation I had on their podcast, Say More, about the Karen Reed case.
Yeah.
I am day to day keeping up with the trial, watching the live blogs of the testimony. Mm-hmm. I just want to say one thing. I want her defense team to represent me if I'm ever accused of second-degree murder or murder. They are so much better than Robert Durst's defense team in this documentary.
You mean they don't lay down on the floor and do dramatic reenactments with fake water pistols?
They do not. They do not. Every single time a witness goes up there, I'm like, oh, this looks really bad for Karen Reed. This looks really bad. And then her lawyer gets up there and like completely destroys everything that person just said in a way that I'm like, how can this possibly be? This person seemed so credible like 5 minutes ago. I have no idea what's going on. Anyway, I'm still following it. Feel free to tweet me or Facebook me about it in our group. I'm not going anywhere on this topic. So anyway.
So what's her deal? What did she do?
Listen to the podcast, Toby. Listen.
Which one? It's not something we've done already, right? It's just something new that you're on, but I don't know the case.
It's in our feed, Toby. We dropped it in our feed so the Boston Globe people were nice enough to give me the audio so we could put it in our feed. So you don't have to find it. You can just go to the Crime Writers On feed, Toby, and get completely caught up.
All right. I was just wondering, like, just generally, she killed somebody or didn't kill somebody?
Allegedly, Toby.
Allegedly, Toby. Really.
And then she was allegedly.
Toby, there's a lot of people. You're jumping in the middle. There's a lot of people do not know what you're talking about at all. There's a Boston area murder case where a woman is accused of striking her cop boyfriend with her car in the middle of a blizzard after leaving an after-hours party where they were both drunk, left him to die in the snow in the front yard, and that's the case. However, the defense is putting forward that all the people at this party who were cops,
some of them were cops.
There's like all sorts of fishy things. Like, what are these dog bites all over the guy's arm? And why did somebody from inside the house Google how long to die in snow hours before the body was found? So it's a really interesting case.
Yeah, that's not exactly right, but yes,
that's close enough.
Some of the broad brushstrokes, yes.
So that's what I was asking.
Rebecca's so excited about this. She always breaks into the middle of it when nobody knows what else she's talking about.
Yes.
So the rest of us have to kind of like say, hey, you got to start at the beginning.
Yes. The most interesting thing about it is that there is a federal investigation of the investigation going on while this trial is going on. That's the most interesting part about it to me. Anyway, speaking of investigations and trials, we have a thing to talk about that I'm looking forward to talking about. So I'd like to get to it, Kevin. What do you think?
I think we should do it.
All right. Leading off, let's do it.
When the Jinx came out, it was a 6-part miniseries, and my prediction was this is going to be the biggest thing to hit my office since OJ.
Years before Robert Durst's hot mic murder confession made it to air, behind the scenes, investigators in the Susan Berman case had been reviewing evidence uncovered by the producers of The Jinx. And as America grew transfixed with the 2015 TV series, the man connected to 3 high-profile crimes felt the heat.
When I called him after the 5th episode, there was a change in Bob. He was clearly now worried. No, I'm sort of busy right now. Let me get back to you. Say Wednesday. Bye-bye. And I thought to myself, holy shit, he's gonna run.
Once the millionaire fugitive was captured, prosecutors began building their legal case by tying together 2 crimes. They argued Berman knew Durst was behind the disappearance of his first wife, Kathleen, and he murdered Berman to keep her quiet. But to prove their theory, they'll have to get it out of Durst's many loyal friends and associates.
What do you do when your best friend kills your other best friend? I mean, loyalty is due to Susan, but it's also due to Bob.
In The Jinx, Part 2, director Andrew Jarecki reveals in real time what was happening as the original HBO series shook up the cold case. With extensive jailhouse recordings and courtroom footage, the sequel dissects the murder trial and seeks to answer the final mystery. What happened to Durst's money? Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from The Jinx, Part 2. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, Kevin, let's first talk about episode 1 of this series.
It's a good place to start.
It is an incredibly meta episode of a true crime docuseries, is it not?
It is. It's clear that they're still recording stuff for, we think perhaps The Jinx 1, while The Jinx is airing, right? And it's entering the zeitgeist. Because I think they didn't really know where to end it, right? You know, before they come, this is how we're going to end it. We're going to do the confession. What's great about us being able to watch it is we know what's about to happen. So we're watching all these people unaware, like what's coming up. And this watch party that everybody's at is just like this incredible scene.
There it is. Your court. Kill them all. Of course.
Oh my God.
Because we know now that the police actually did have this information that they dug up at the time that Robert Durst went on the lam in 2015, because that was one of our big criticisms, and the thing that we talked about a lot in our discussion of the original Jinx was the ethics of holding back that confession from investigators. And we're like, oh man, Durst could have killed somebody in the meantime and he's on the run, and that's all horrible. And we find out the police actually had all the material in 2013 and they've been working their case behind the scenes. So it does bring up the opposite side of that ethical argument. Should they have been sharing their work product with investigators? But it takes the guessing out of what happened.
Yeah. So there are so many interesting things about this, and it kind of brings you back in time, Toby, like that watch party. Like, for instance, we see Judge Jeanine Pirro, back in time before she became the Judge Jeanine Pirro that we now know today from all of the
really? Before, do you think?
Election. Well,
you think?
Granted, it feels like a throwback, right? It all feels like a throwback to this whole thing. And then I'm also reminded of these insane details from Durst's case. For instance, a juror from his Texas trial, the guy who, I don't want to say threw the case for him, but it sure seems like it, became his personal assistant because he was rich. And that was why I think he found Robert Durst not guilty, because he saw he had money. These sort of behind the scenes details that we get, this guy and his wife helping clean Robert Durst's apartment after he goes on the run. This is some behind the scenes meta stuff that we don't usually get to see after something is over. This is not usually what a part 2 looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a few things about that. One of which is I was never quite, I think, as convinced about his sort of bathroom confession as other people might have been, and that it just, when he says, I said, they're going to think I killed everybody, and they're like, no, that's not what you said. You said, I killed everybody. It seems completely plausible to me that he was thinking that, and then that was what he said out loud, because that makes as much sense as just going into a bathroom and just confessing to the mirror. But, especially the thing with that guy who's on the jury, I thought it was kind of interesting in that it is sort of foreshadowing all these relationships that you see Durst have, in that in the end, almost nobody genuinely likes him. It's always we're getting this dude Alexis to keep him sticking with me,
but only this year's model, Toby, not next year's model. So we're cheaping out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you don't want to go crazy, and it was one of the cheaper Lexuses. It seems like all these relationships are essentially based on money, except for 2, which are Susan and Nick, who I'm sure we're about to talk about. Maybe he's just such a sociopath that he doesn't even understand the difference, and that he's surprised when people won't return his calls after he's convicted and stuff. It's funny in that I don't know if I skipped through the previously on the Jinx part, so then it kind of felt like I was just dropped in the middle of something that had already started. But there was a little period where I was like, okay, what is this again? What happened? And it's oh, okay. All right. So I think it was good in terms of storytelling, in terms of that foreshadowing. It brings you up to speed in a way that's not 15 minutes of retelling the first season of the Jinx, but it kind of gets you again familiar with what's going on and what the stakes are. And yeah, it's a little weird. It's hard for me to imagine doing a thing about how much my previous thing meant to people. It's kind of a strange look, but I think it was pretty effective in this season.
So Laura, Robert Durst has a nemesis in this season of the Jinx, DA John Lewin, who we get a lot of prosecutors in things that we review. We get prosecutors who are corrupt. We get prosecutors who are earnest. We get prosecutors who are boring. We get prosecutors who are just guys in suits. John Lewin is not like any other prosecutor, in my opinion, that we have covered in any piece of media. He was meant for this case in many, many ways. What did you think of him?
I'd like to go have a drink with him and just pick his brain. He is funny. He seems like a lot of prosecutors, and I don't mean to categorize any prosecutors out there listening, kind of have a stick up their butt. Not this guy. He's just fun. He's hey, get a load of this guy, everything Durst does. I loved when he was getting ready to cross-examine Durst, and he had this whole plan, and he's going to see which way it's going to go, because Durst has been I'm sick. I'm in my COVID mask. And he's well, what should I call you? And he's call me sir. And he's he wasn't expecting that. But I think he comes into this as somebody that, interviewed Durst right after the arrest in 2015, has been leading the prosecution against him during the COVID times when we're all wearing various COVID masks. And I think that his ability to recount his approach in the case with some levity and a sense of humor, but also he's taking this case seriously, but he also knows this case is absurd and that the cast of characters is absurd. And you see that start to come out as he's out trying to speak to these people that are, loyal to Durst, that he knows probably have information that won't flip. In the beginning, I didn't even realize, honestly, because he was so chill. I was like, wait, is that the prosecutor? Because he just is not like a traditional prosecutor. Like, he's more like a defense attorney, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
So I think he was a great character to sort of be sort of like that central focal point as we're narrating what's happening in this case, because eventually it does turn into sort of like a traditional courtroom drama. But I think his setup is what really brings kind of some heart to it in a way that is engaging and entertaining and goes with all of the absurdity that is Robert Durst.
No, I agree. And I'll just say, like, you can give me crap about it if you want. I mean, I know Robert Durst killed like at least 3 people. Robert Durst is fucking hilarious. And he also thinks he's hilarious, right? Like, he's not only like patently hilarious. Like, he says things that are objectively funny. He also thinks he's way funnier than he is. He's also an absurd human being because he's like this, he has like more than $100 million. He comes from this billionaire family. Like, I actually believe Succession is based on the Dursts. I've always thought that because like in the first season of Succession, like one of the kids kills somebody and it's just like, that's a plot point that's just like happens and then it's over. Like the family just kind of covers it up and whatever. And I'm like, it's based on the Jinx. I really always thought that. And like, they're just, he's just an absurd person. And John Lewin, I think, like leans into it. Like, he actually tells us that he agrees that Bob Durst is funny. And I actually think the fact that Bob Durst is funny and absurd is how he got away with these murders for so long.
I think it's because he's rich.
Well, that's that too. But also, Kevin, like, he's so... like, he's not disarming. He's like whatever like the evil side of disarming is. It's like
arming.
He has this way of talking that's like, yeah, no, I didn't kill him. I just mutilated his body and threw it away. Like, who would say they did that and like that also not admit to doing the murder? Like, it's just, like he's that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
You do hear that, Rebecca, when the jurors talk about their impressions of him and they are like kind of liking him and they're kind of feeling some sympathy for him. And it's because of that quality that he has.
Right. And I think that John Lewin's great because he agrees that Bob is funny and he's not doing that thing that prosecutors do where they're like, this isn't funny, sir. He's like, no, he is funny and let's let him be funny and then let's trap him with his funniness. Mm-hmm. Speaking of funny, Kevin.
Frisbees. No, yes.
We have as a Greek chorus in this series, my favorite 2 characters that I have seen on television in years, telling us about some of the background of the legal case. Can we talk about the twins?
Sure.
So we have these twin paralegals. I guess they were paralegals at the time. They were both in law school together, and they get hired on. And it's not for some reason. Obviously, it's for comedic value and like storytelling greatness. The director puts them on the camera together, sitting exactly next to each other, framed
squarely. Yeah, I'm sure the twins never have been manipulated like that in their lives. Come on, kids, wear the same necktie.
They have identical voices, and they finish each other's sentences over and over and over again. And the first time we see them, they describe what it's like listening to tapes of jail phone calls from Robert Durst.
Yes, right. So they're going through and they say, this is how every collect phone call from Bob Durst would sound.
It goes, boop, 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 boop.
Hello, this is a prepaid call from
Bob.
And I enjoy that was, I mean, it's funny sounding. And then when you hear it, you can't unhear it. But I enjoyed that it was like this recurring motif throughout the series because they did rely on a lot of telephone calls to tell Durst's story this time. And they didn't do it every single time, but when it would come back, it would, certainly bring a smile. Were these 2 twin paralegals or young junior attorneys, were they the most important people on the team? Nope.
Yes.
Probably not. Nope. Probably not. But they were the most memorable and they were a good pick for the series.
Toby, I think they were the most important people on the legal team. What about you?
I think they were the most important people for you. That's for sure.
Their enthusiasm for this project.
Yeah, I thought they were just like so clearly psyched to be on the documentary. Like when one would be talking, the other would have this huge smile on his face.
I mean, come on now. It's a gift.
Like when they introduce themselves, when they're like, and if you like me, you might like my twin brother. And I'm like, this is like the Double Mint gum commercial. Like, what's next?
It was money having people like this as your paralegals, right, Kevin?
Absolutely money, like the money that you'll spend at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
Just like that. Just like that when you support this podcast, right, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that was an awkward transition. That's all Rebecca's fault.
That's right. It was. I said the word money and I looked at you and this like this.
I had this whole other thing. It was really fantastic.
What were you going to do?
It was hysterical. No, I'm just going to leave it now.
Okay, you can save it for a future podcast.
Yeah, save it for future podcast.
The Jinx 3.
Yeah.
All right, so Kevin,
you jinxed me.
We're in the business section.
Yeah, we are.
What's happening in the business section?
Oh, well, we've got great stuff for you at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, including the Crime Writers on After Show. You ready for this after show?
Sure.
So we had a friend of the show went out there and created a BuzzFeed poll where you could type in a couple of different, answer a couple different questions and find out which CWO crime writer are you.
Yeah.
And so we're going to play that game with special guests.
All right.
Oh.
Okay.
That I'm not telling you until it happens, so it'll be a surprise.
Looking forward to hearing that. It's going to be fun.
Other great things include Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. The next book club, Toby will be joined by Meredith Constant, Simone Paget, and Lauren Bright Pacheco. And what is the book, Toby?
It's called The Good Girls in Ordinary Killing by Sonia Falero. And it is about to the point where I am right now.
The book jacket, yeah.
Which is, I'm about a quarter of the way through the book. It's about two girls who disappear from their tiny little town in, I think, Uttar Pradesh, which is a state in India that has a population of 200 million people. Which is nuts. But it's actually, I'm really enjoying this. It moves along. It's super interesting. Like, even though it hasn't really gotten to the crime yet, just kind of learning about these people's lives and the like people who live in their community and stuff is really good.
We also have Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and my goddamn head nearly exploded listening to the latest episode because...
Why?
If you would like to know what it'd be like to go on a date with Laura Bricker...
Oh.
And that date also happens to be at a burlesque show.
Okay.
In which Laura talks to people. Then this is the episode for you.
All right. So if you want to go on a vicarious date with Laura Bricker, this is your chance.
Yeah, she actually brings back the nameless date.
The mysterious bearded army man.
And they do a rundown, a recap of the date, and it's pretty interesting.
Can we give him a pseudonym? Chet.
Is that better than Mysterious Bearded Army Guy?
What does Chet stand for?
I don't know. I just want to give him a name. I want to give him
I think if it's a bearded army guy, it's got to be like Lance.
Ooh,
yeah.
Lance.
Corporal Lance Corporal.
Lance is good. Lance is hot.
I don't think I'm going to be able to get any better than Lance off
Lance
the top
is
of my
good.
head.
All right, so Laura and Lance.
All right, Lance, yes. Also got to let you know there's a real special thing coming to Patreon this summer. As we're almost in the summer, we're in June, so, we're going to have on Patreon episodes of Rebecca's Other People's Problems.
Yeah.
This was a show debuted on Grab Bag Collab, and if you didn't get to hear those 10 episodes, we'll be playing them throughout the summer.
That's right. We will. It's going to be a good time. You're going to catch up on that. All right, Kevin. Of course, people should sign up for our newsletter, right? At crimewriterson.com, and they can catch up on everything that's going on.
Yes, they should.
Free. Does thus end our business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. So, Kevin, who is our next sponsor on this program?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Oh, Quince, yay! I just ordered something from Quince.
Yeah, okay, so the weather's getting warmer, and we're putting away, like, all those winter sweaters and the big jackets, and you know what you find out?
You need stuff.
You don't have anything really great for the warmer weather, so this is a great time to look into the great deals they have at Quince. They have premium European linen dresses, blouses, shorts from $30, washable silk tops, 14-karat gold jewelry, so much more. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
Yep, I just ordered something from Quince. Literally, just did.
What did you get?
I have this cardigan that I have there in like this light blue color. It's this cotton and linen like boyfriend fit cardigan that I got last summer that I love so much. I just ordered a second one in camel because I wear it all the time. I love it so much, and I ordered a new one. I love it.
Okay, so I guess that's a personal endorsement?
It is. I love Quince. I love it so much.
Get warm, weather ready with Quince. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime. To get free shipping and 365-day returns, QUINCE.com/crime.
Crime. All right, so Kevin, who is our next sponsor on the show?
We're sponsored by Shopify.
Ooh.
Okay, so you got to name some sleuthing partners who got it done. Watson and Holmes. The Hardy Boys. Cagney and Lacey.
Oh.
Rizzoli and Isles.
Wait a minute, how old was the person that wrote this copy? They put down Cagney and Lacey.
They put down
I
the
love
Hardy
Cagney and
Boys.
Lacey.
What?
I use Cagney and Lacey all the time when I refer to my colleague and my PI colleague. I'm like, we're like Cagney and Lacey.
Oh, man.
My God, this is like, you had no electricity in the 80s, but you knew Cagney and Lacey on CBS.
Yes. I don't know how it happened.
Toby doesn't even know who Cagney and Lacey are. I guarantee
And
it.
I do.
Isn't it like Tyne Daly?
Oh, wow, snap.
Wow.
It's like Scott and Bailey. It's like Scott and Bailey are like the British version of Cagney and Lacey.
Okay, Rizzoli and Isles. I was going to go Mulder and Scully myself.
Wow.
Starsky and Hutch.
Oh, okay. There you go. Chico and the Man. They weren't detectives, right?
They not usually.
Do heart-to-heart count?
Yeah, because when they met, it was murder. But what about perfect partners when it comes to growing your business? That's you and Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to your, did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify is there for you. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star.
Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers, all lowercase.
Go to shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
All lowercase now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/crimewriters.
For the first time ever on 60 Days In.
We're going in
as a united front.
We signed up for this.
Would you?
60 Days In. New season premieres Thursday at 9. Part of The Pursuit, a crime and investigation event only on A&E.
All right, we talked about the twins. Now we have to talk about Robert Durst's merry band of friends, because the friends end up being extremely important in the structure of Robert Durst's life and in propping him up, I think, and in having him just sort of like be able to maintain everything that he's doing and feeling and the way that he's living. So we'll get to Susan Berman, because I think that she plays a kind of an interesting role, both as victim and friend. But we need to talk about Nick.
He's my favorite.
Chingachaven.
Toby, when we first meet Nick, the first thing I thought was, Toby, like, you want to talk about a subculture. Nick belongs to one, does he not?
Pornographic country songs?
Yeah.
Yes.
That big radio hit, Cum Stains on My Pillow.
Yeah. It might be a subculture of one.
Dry humping on the back of the Ford.
And what's funny about that was that you get that, and then you get like the very beginning of his sort of friendship with Bob. And then when you actually meet Nick, it's really hard to picture him like that, because when you meet him, I mean, part of it is I think he's just sort of depressed and he's kind of at the end of his life, but it's hard to see that dude getting up on stage and singing like X-rated country tunes and just like flaunting what he's got, I guess.
That album cover where you see his like bare naked ass
with his totally square wife sitting in the audience.
Yeah, and his wife seems like pretty like staid, and she's like, yeah, we don't play that music in the house. If he plays that music, it's when I'm out of the house.
Should we listen to Cum Stains on My Pillow?
On the pillow. Try not to besmirch the song. Country porn was a much more powerful hook than I ever thought possible. And the thing caught on immediately. I'm making cum stains on the pillow where she used to be.
In some ways, he's the most interesting character in the whole thing, in that he's like the only person who's really conflicted. And I think he's only one of two people who isn't using Bob as much as Bob is using them, right? I mean, he's one of the few people who I think has actual sort of sincere feelings of sort of affection for Bob. You know, as much as there's a like living person who's kind of a tragic figure in this, I think it's him. I mean, it clearly takes a psychological toll on him. As he said, you know, what happens when one of your best friends kills the other? So he's the key figure in my mind to this whole thing, because otherwise it's just sort of heroes and villains.
Yeah. What do you think about Nick, Laura?
I loved him. And I think, like right off the bat, like when Toby said, it's hard to imagine him in the way that we later see him during his rock star years, as he's like wheeling his little grocery carriage into his old person apartment down in Boca Raton, like any number of stereotypical old retired guys in Florida. But I think what was just kind of interesting about him is it sets the scene of how the relationships in this case that are, I think, some of the more critical relationships, like between Bob and Susan, and how he meets Susan. And I thought also it was kind of funny how he said, like, she taught me how to live wealthily in Manhattan. But how he met Bob through Susan, how Susan championed his country porn career by writing about him and kind of getting him on the map and kind of coaching him. And when they would go somewhere and he was still in his clothes, kind of like talking him up, like, oh, I look like a celebrity. Oh, just go with it or whatever. But then kind of watching where he is now, it just felt kind of like a tragedy. Like that was like the high point of this guy's life. And now he's just left to sit there and ponder. Bob Durst is dead. Susan is murdered. And I guess I imagine if I was him, I'd just be sitting there thinking, like, did any of it mean anything? Like, was any of it real? What did I miss? Like, how am I still here? But I think just sort of seeing the people that were closest to Bob Durst and how they were able to maintain, like, no matter what, this loyalty, this blind loyalty. And you really see it here with him, like when they're asking him questions about, like, well, what about this? Or like, what about when you found out, like, Bob chopped this guy up or that? And it's like, doesn't matter.
Right.
And I think that's the phenomenon about Bob Durst, that when you finish this, you're like, what is it about this guy that all these people just managed to explain away everything that happened as if it doesn't even matter? And I know, yes, in the end, we find out they're all getting money and Lexuses and all that stuff, but there's something else going on there.
Right. I think they're remembering a different version of him, right, Kevin?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's different about Nick versus all those other people is that he also had a loving, caring, sincere relationship with Susan.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure a lot of those people did not. And Toby, you said, I understand what you were saying when you said that, like, Bob Durst is getting more out of these other people than with Nick. But I also think that those people are getting a lot out of Bob Durst, right? It's very transactional when big dollar signs come up like that. And Nick just sort of seems like the most sincere. Like, I mean, you hit it. Like, my heart kind of broke a little bit when he says, what do you do when, one best friend kills the other one? Like, ultimately his loyalty was to Susan. And I think to the extent that he could, whatever information he did have, sounds like that dinner that Durst invited him to would probably have gone differently. Maybe if there'd been, I don't know, maybe a little more time for him to be candid, but it sounded like there was an opportunity to get some good stuff there, but he didn't. And whatever he knew, I think he told.
I think that, like, he's remembering a different version of Bob. I mean, I think that Bob is just very good at being, like, through his life, like, he went through these different phases and he was kind of a chameleon in these different phases of his life. And he went through this period of his life where he was like gadfly, man about town, like when he befriended Susan and she became his closest bud, right? Like, to me, it felt like Susan was the center of that social circle. She was like the sun around which these men orbited and kind of. The portrayal of Susan is super interesting. Like, Toby, what do you make of Susan? Because she sort of seems like very, very important. And then you find out she's sort of living in squalor, like sleeping on a mattress in her house in California and like not doing too great. And then she ends up becoming the victim of this crime. Like, she ends up, Durst allegedly thinks that she's the linchpin that could bring him down. It's like a little bit confusing considering how central she was to his life.
Yeah, she's interesting. Like, she's definitely an enabler for him. They do spend quite a bit of time kind of giving her backstory, and that her father was a mobster and that her mother was basically her father's enabler. And so she kind of, I think that was sort of the model she had in her head about what it means to be a good, not necessarily partner, but female companion to a man who's powerful. So, yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting. Like, a question that I had when the whole thing is done, and I guess I'm getting ahead of us a little bit, but the idea was there were two people who could really blow the whistle on Bob, and it was Susan and it was Deborah. And so he married one and killed the other. And I was kind of like, well, why didn't you marry Susan and then kill Deborah?
You're talking like fuck, marry, kill.
Yeah, exactly. And the fuck one is that other woman who kind of shows up every once in a while, and it's
The
like,
younger one, yeah.
give her $10,000, to do this.
There's the fuck, marry, kill. Absolutely.
The tape I thought was incredible, Laura, was the tape of Susan Berman talking to that reporter and like guiding the story. You see, it was like, see, she was just leaving the house. See, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she did cocaine, right? See, remember when she was like telling the reporter what to write, essentially?
Okay, Kathy did coke. Now, the coke dealer, I don't know him, but Bobby does.
The last thing in the world anybody in drugs does is hit the customer. I mean...
No, not that he killed her, but that maybe she died of an overdose and he stuffed the body somewhere. But no. They have the idea. It's not, is it? No. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I thought that was wild. Like it seemed like she was definitely not supposing things. She was pushing the story.
Well, she was. And it was fascinating because I'm like, okay, so how is this playing out that this person is actually listening to her? I'm like, oh, it's like one reporter to another, one journalist to another. Oh, I know this guy and this is what I think might have happened and da-da-da-da-da. And like, again, I think it goes to that. And it also goes to this sort of like culture in New York and the culture of journalism at that time. And just, again, her loyalty to Bob that was pretty unwavering, and until she died. Yeah. But just the fact that the other person was going along with it. I mean, that the whole thing was just fascinating to me.
Yeah,
they don't do a very good job of positioning who Albert Goldman is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not like some guy who like writes for the New York Times or something. He wrote these like very lurid books in the 80s about like Elvis and the Beatles and stuff. Like he's like elevated trash, but it was
elevated trash.
Yeah. I mean, he's not an investigative journalist into like national affairs or something. It's like, how much of a freak was Elvis really? It's that kind of thing.
Okay. So it's somebody that she could easily influence because they're already enticed to write those sort of sensational stories.
And I think he just thinks about things in those ways.
Yeah.
He's like, what's the most fucked up thing that Bob Durst could have done? Well, let me see.
Yeah.
Right.
So speaking of fucked up, Kevin, do you think that Bob Durst got his money's worth for his legal team at the trial?
God.
Right. So like what we talk about in the finale last night has a lot to do with Durst's money. And so we're led to believe that he spent all of his money. He had $100 million and now there's nothing left. He's $200,000 in debt, his estate. But apparently, they want to make the argument he spent it all on his trial. And man, for $12 million, he got dick because not only does he have this old Texas lawyer, I mean, he might have been great in Galveston, but what a mistake. He doesn't know California procedures.
Oh, the objections?
Yeah. And instead of like this flashy defense with all sorts of maybe video recreations or laser beams or something, they're writing shit with magic marker on flip charts and easels in the middle of this.
With boxes. A box is Bob, a box is Susan.
Yeah.
Lines between them.
What the fuck?
Well, the Gwyneth Paltrow lawyers, they had animation. It was for their stupid case for $12 million. What did he get? He didn't get a lot for his money. And so
he didn't even get them telling him that he was found guilty.
Yeah, they were like, they fucked right off when that was over. Yeah.
Do you think Deborah like intentionally like hooked him up with shitty lawyers so he wouldn't get out?
Nah, I don't know. I mean, I think Durst just had an affinity for this guy because he did
get
him off
Texas
once, and
but that Vegas guy who I think she must have gotten, like, he was kind of a buffoon too.
Well, she was shitting on his lawyers, right? During the trial. We heard that in their phone calls that she didn't like his lawyers, but this is what I think. I think that like when you're really rich, you like know the guys you know and you stick with the guys you know that will stick with you. And that's sort of what Bob did, right? It worked for me last time, so I'm going to do the same thing again. And he thought he could wash, rinse, repeat with the same sort of attitude in court too that he did in Texas.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. Laura, were you surprised that he was cross-examined for 9 fucking days?
Yes. Given that he looked like Skeletor when he was up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the fact that his attorneys were able to not like object to that at some level and cut that down also was a little surprising. I just felt like he got such an ineffective assistance from his attorneys in this case. And watching this as somebody that works in criminal defense, I'm like, for $12 million, He should have had experts. He should have had recreations. He should have had
puppets.
Well, he should have had
marionettes.
He should have had like a freaking theatrical show at intermission, for crying out loud. Like, I remember I was covering, when I was a reporter, I was covering this death penalty case here in New Hampshire, and that was also a wealthy guy. This was a John Brooks case, and I was over covering it for the Associated Press. And that guy brought in his team, and he had like 4 lawyers. And they had this whole like video montage that they put together with like music of him playing his music. And at that time, that seemed high tech. I feel like we could have had the Bob Durst video montage. Nothing. Yeah. Nothing. Instead, we have the guy laying on the ground, his attorney like recreating something.
Grappling.
It's like totally non-scientific, has had no sort of actual firearms expert look at that in a way that is actually something that's going to translate to the jury. And I'm like, what a buffoon. I'm sorry. I mean, I know Durst like is guilty. However, everybody is entitled to have effective representation.
Yes.
And my God, did he not have effective representation?
There's a difference between ineffective to a 6th Amendment degree violation and just bad.
Yeah.
Right?
But dropping the ball, I will tell you, dropping the ball here in New Hampshire like that could get you brought up to the state for an ineffective assistance of counsel claim because you did not actually do your due diligence.
What's the reversible error then? Well, I mean, what was it? That he didn't have videos?
That they allowed him to testify.
They were just fucking sloppy. Like they just were sloppy. They felt unprepared. They felt like they were just sort of there as like the eye candy for the legal team. And I just felt like they didn't really do anything.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, obviously, they can't prevent him from testifying if he wants to.
Right.
That being said, I have never heard of a high-profile case where a defendant said, no, I didn't do it, but if I did, I would lie to you about
it. That's something.
This is my last question. As you sit here right now, did you kill Susan Berman?
No.
But if you had, you would lie about it, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, right?
Yeah. I mean, I could see that being a calculation that he makes in like, I'm kind of fucked. So my kind of Hail Mary is to be like brutally honest about certain things and not about others and make myself look kind of weird, but also at the same time, like maybe get them to trust me a little bit more. That to me was like one of the more interesting parts of the whole thing was when he was just like, I'm just going to start answering shit in ways that are like actually honest, but which no normal person would possibly say in my situation. I found that to be one of the payoffs to listening to a fuck ton of court stuff. You know, that was one of the times when I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. Because a lot of it for me, I was just like, okay, let's move this along.
A&E's crime and investigation event, The Pursuit, returns with a new, unprecedented season of 60 Days In.
This time, we're going in
as a united front. Together as one team.
with one unified mission.
We are determined to expose
What's really going on? Get off! We signed up for this.
Would you?
60 Days In. New season premieres Thursday at 9. Part of The Pursuit, a crime and investigation event only on A&E.
For 25 years, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Looking for some amazing TV to stream? Indulge yourself with the hits on Hulu you can't miss. Dive in with Barney, Ted, Robin, and the gang on How I Met Your Mother. All 9 seasons are now streaming on Hulu. Then you can move to Modern Family, Schitt's Creek, and My Wife and Kids. We're talking every episode and every season of these shows. We're talking huge hits, streaming on Hulu whenever you're in the mood. Now we're talking.
Life doesn't have a pause button. That's why Capella University's FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines and adjust them if something comes up. Imagine how a flexible education can make a difference for you at capella.edu.
Okay, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the Jinx Season 2? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for the Jinx Season 2?
Yeah, so I'll go thumbs up with this. I feel like season 1 of the Jinx is going to remain sort of like in our early days of this podcast, one of the documentaries that just stands out as like, well, that was like at the time very groundbreaking. It remains like a classic. It's you know, the ending. At this point, we need the finale. We need to know how it wraps up. But anybody that pretty much followed season 1 of the Jinx and then was interested in the case, most likely then followed it in the media. I think what's different about this one is that we don't have Bob Durst cooperating with the filmmakers in the same way. We still have access to him through videos and courtroom, but he's in a different role in this thing than he was in the first one. And I think this is sort of the resolution. There are some great characters in it. I think what this brought forward that really stuck with me were the cast of characters that were friends of his that have been loyal to him. Some very interesting characters there. I learned some musical lyrics that I'm never going to be able to get out of my head. And so I'm going thumbs up.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for the Jinx season 2?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up too. I'm not like a huge thumbs up, but a solid thumbs up. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think in some ways, sort of the portrait of a really rich guy who he murdered 3 people. He was like super sketchy. And seeing this sort of final act of his and the way the people who were sort of quote unquote his friends and associates and stuff, how they sort of regard him and act towards him is pretty interesting. There's a lot of like court stuff, which I guess I found wasn't really my thing. I kind of felt like it went on and on at times. There are some payoffs definitely to it. So it's good. It's well made. And I think there's stuff there. Again, like some of the decisions about how long certain things went wouldn't have been the decisions I would have made, but that's also fine. So I, watch the Jinx first, season 1 first, if you haven't, and then watch this one. But it's definitely, it's worth your time.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm going thumbs up as well. I thought episode 1 was fantastic. It was kind of a mind blower because of the way the time it was set and what we saw. And episode 2 kind of brings us up to the trial. And usually in some true crime titles, when you get to the trial, thing really just loses steam because maybe you're just sort of hearing about things that you already know, and it's not always done well. I thought visually they made it interesting. And I also thought that they did a good job of taking the story that we thought we knew from part 1 and explaining a different way about how it all fits together and perhaps answering the open questions from that in a legal sense. And I also like the way that when they bring somebody to the stand, it's like they were able to really come back into this backstory for each of them that was told at I felt like the right time. Jinx number 1, fantastic. It's at the top of the ziggurat. It's just you're not going to be able to capture lightning in the bottle. But and a lot of times when you do a sequel, like with Serial or Making a Murderer, it really suffers from comparisons to the original. This is still very good, and I thought that it really took, the story from the Jinx part 1 and brought it to a pretty good ending. They landed the plane, and I thought sort of also what they kind of dug up in the finale was also a thinker. So this is a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I like this series a lot. Could there have been one fewer episode about the trial? Maybe. I don't really care. I really enjoyed meeting all of the people that sort of were woven in and out of Bob Durst's life and sort of seeing the rot that kind of goes with being that wealthy, what people are willing to put up with, what people are willing to ignore, and then also just sort of the weirdness of Bob's circle and, getting that, even just hearing from his siblings about his, very young Bob Durst. So just sort of these little moments of like windows opening, getting a look and pulling back that are so fascinating to me and so Succession to me. It's just like I could not stop thinking about Succession the entire time that I was watching it. And from a filmmaking point of view, I just think that the people who made this series did such a good job of leaning into just the sheer humor and the sheer absurdity of Bob Durst, and just knowing that plays a huge part in how it was that he got away with what he got away with for so long, and then using some of those same devices in the making of this. So it's like we got a frame that sort of matched that absurdity, and I really appreciated the art of that. So yeah, big thumbs up for me for the Jinx season 2. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call
Crime of the Week!
The Crime of the Week. One British woman thought she was saving money using an Airbnb, only to find out later the homeowner charged her extra for things like using the microwave and the Wi-Fi. The TikToker named Joanna said she got an additional bill for the equivalent of $900 for using the microwave and washing machine, a carpet cleaning, and doing a number 2 in the loo. Her video showed all the warning signs posted around the home, including not sitting in her deceased husband's favorite chair. Airbnb's website says extra charges cannot be collected. In her video, Joanna confronts the homeowner on the phone about the additional fees. The host said the guest used the washing machine and pool table twice, leading many to believe there are also hidden cameras in the home. So, panel, this woman was charged extra for amenities at her Airbnb. If you were to rent out your home as an Airbnb, what amenities would the guest demand a refund for? Lara Bricker?
Well, there's no death chair in my home, so you don't have to worry about sitting in the death chair when you come over.
But
I think they might. I mean, maybe my discount massage chair might not be up to snuff. And Rebecca knew I was going to say that. And they might be like, you know what? I don't think that was as good of a massage as you promised, and I want a refund.
Yeah, it was a Bob's version.
It was the Bob's one, but I'm covering up the Bob's by putting a sticker on the remote control. So it's now the pretend upmarket.
It's going to be Lance's massage chair.
Oh.
Toby Ball, if you were to rent out your home as an Airbnb, what amenities would the guest demand a refund for?
I usually charge people for looking out the window.
Yeah.
You know what I thought he was going to say?
What?
And demand a refund, that's not my pickleball court.
Exactly. Don't play on the pickleball court. That would have been a better answer.
What about you, Kevin?
Dog farts.
Oh!
All right, Lara Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and learn more about your double discount massage chair, how can they find you online?
They can find me at Lara Bricker on Twitter and Instagram. And I should say, my friend, the Swiss chef, was at my house trying the massage chair once, and he said, I didn't know I needed a massage of my anus today. So that might also play into this, but you can let me know about it on Twitter or Instagram.
The old anal massage.
I think that's worth another $5.
Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you online. How can they find you there?
At Toby Ball NH.
What about you, Kevin? How can you be found?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers On. You can even find us on YouTube if you want, but I really encourage you to join our amazing Facebook group. Just find us on Facebook. It's a regular old page. There's a pin post on how to join the group. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. There you can also get this Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Lara Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcasts. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our line editor is the terrific Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also make collect calls and say they're from Bob. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
You didn't feel sympathy for that guy who only goes to Saint Tropez every third year now because he's old? Wah.
Life is hard, man.
I mean, that's just like, how does he get by? How does he get through a day?
Tough being rich.
And the other guy with the not so great Lexus.
I mean, and the not so good hair dye either.
In crime media. For 25 years, nothing has tasted better after a hard day's work than a Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's because since day one, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. We use 3 kinds of lemons, all hand-picked from family farms, then blended to perfection and cold pressed to create the epic hard lemonade you know and love. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.